Thank you so much for being on the programme. It's good to have you here. So, first of all, just what exactly is it that you're calling for?
I'm calling for a reset. I want the political establishment here to really understand how deeply the rest of the public feel that, yes, they want their right to peaceful protest to be respected, but they do not accept the kind of severe, extreme criminal disruption that is too often continuing in the name of noble causes which they may support, but they absolutely abhor the way that those are being carried out on our streets.
Look, there's lots of free speech arguments about this, about the right to shut down protests, but I just wonder if it goes a bit deeper than that as well. People protest, they take to the streets because they feel they're being ignored.
Yeah.
They can't be listened to by the government, by the police, by the establishment. How do you think it's going to feel if the establishment are basically now telling them that not only are they being ignored, but they're effectively being silenced too, that they can't do that?
But actually, I don't think people are silenced, and I think we've got ourselves into a kind of unhealthy dialogue where we think that the only way in which you can... Sometimes we make out as if the only way in which you can have your say is by turning up in the street in large numbers. And actually, but we're lucky.
That they can't have their say. That's why they do it. If they felt they could have their say, they wouldn't do it, would they?
Well, but actually, we're lucky to live in a parliamentary democracy where there are so many ways, actually, in which you can have your say and make your voice known. But there is ultimately no shortcut for convincing enough of your fellow citizens that your position is right and that the governments need to act on that. And I think we need to do better as parliamentarians to actually stand up for and champion, and yes, sometimes get better at actually engaging with the public, but to say that if you want change, the way to do that is through engaging in the ballot box.
Oh, come on. If you're in like a safe parliamentary seat, then... You don't feel like democracy is necessarily working for you, or the majority of people might think one thing, but you might believe something very passionately that you need to raise awareness.
And the right to protest is absolutely sacrosanct, but to do so peacefully, and where it goes into breaking that balance, breaking the barrier and becoming about disrupting people's lives, stopping them going about their business. You've had, with the way that climate organisations have blocked roads, ambulance not being able to get to hospital, people not being able to get to work. That is not acceptable. And I would say that actually the climate solutions are really difficult. We need to go faster, but we have to convince the public that it's the right thing to do, and short-circuiting that by essentially menacing governments to do what you want them to do through the sort of threat of force and major disruption is not acceptable, and it ultimately won't work.
You obviously want greater powers to police or crack down on protests, but the judiciary, it feels, perhaps believes politicians are already effectively going so far, because legislation introduced last year under Suella Braverman gave officers more leeway to stop disruption, but two High Court judges have ruled it doesn't have a proper legal basis. I just want to read to you Greenpeace. This High Court defeat should be a clear warning to Rishi Sunak's government that its criminalisation of peaceful protests has already gone too far. The very last thing we need now is new ideas from Lord Walney, that's you, on a further crackdown.
I want to look at that judgment, because my understanding of that judgment is actually that the objection that the judges had was about the process of bringing the law in. And that is an important distinction, because, yes, absolutely, these laws are really important.
So Greenpeace have got it wrong, then, you think?
Well, that was, as I say, I've been busy launching the review, but my understanding is it's about the process. And it is right that there is a rigorous process on any of these kind of regulations and restrictions. It has to be robust. It should be challenged. But actually, I think that we are getting into a place where we are essentially legitimising and seeing as an essential part of our liberal democracy the kind of tactics that actually are in fact designed to circumvent our democracy and have people who are the most disruptive being listened to. We wouldn't accept that in a cause that we didn't agree with. And I think too many of us are actually getting into a position where we think, well, look, I agree with the overall cause, therefore I'm prepared to justify extreme ways of enacting it. And that's a very dangerous position for us to be in.
Is there a protest that you can point to that you would have said that should have been shut down?
Well, I think one of the recommendations I have is that there are protests that are clearly illegal, blocking roads, and people are being... The police have been... Let's see what happens with it after this court ruling, but the police have been removing people from the roads at great sort of... Still time and disruption and policing costs. They've been charging people, but it takes months, years to go through the criminal system. And often you're finding in some circumstances that charges are being dropped and maybe judges aren't always following through. So there isn't the deterrent effect in the system that you need. And actually, one of the recommendations is to have a mechanism so that you can place restrictions on those organisations that use explicitly extreme criminal methods to protest, that they shouldn't find it as easy to advertise, to get on social media, to raise money.
It feels a bit like you're talking about, for example, some of the Extinction Rebellion tactics. Now, they are very angry about this report. They've raised questions about your neutrality. And your register of interests shows connections, doesn't it, to oil and arms industry. So they've said it's shameful for the Home Secretary to commission a supposedly independent report for someone who acts as a lobbyist for both the fossil fuel companies and the arms companies whose profits are threatened by the activities of the group.
Look, that isn't the case. My interests and declarations are formally recorded as you would expect. But look,
so what's wrong about it? What's wrong about it?
Well, I have. I'm not a lobbyist, of course not.
Okay.
But I have worked extensively on this report for 3 years. I mean, I've commissioned...
But let's just...
But you asked
oil and arm industries.
What's wrong with it. So I have commissioned polling, I've done extensive literature, I've engaged wide, including actually with Extinction Rebellion, and I've produced quite a long document with 41 recommendations. It's going to be for government and for opposition to think that through. But I think this is a considered piece of work, and I hope people will take it seriously.
Just finally, we've seen protests around politicians' homes. There's been a protest here downstairs.
Sure.
With David Lammy speaking. People are unhappy about the stance of Labour on Gaza, so there is protest literally in this building as we're speaking. Are you worried about politicians' safety? Yeah,
I really am, and that's been one of the things that's been driving many of the recommendations in my report. There is a level of threat that our elected representatives are facing, which is leading many of them can now no longer be deemed safe to use public transport. As you say, their families can be targeted. Part of that is actually the police enforcing the law on issues like protests outside private homes. But I think we also need to do more to look at the extent of this threat and what can be done. Harriet Harman, the mother of the house, has got a really sensible recommendation that I'm endorsing in my review to have a bigger conversation about this, speak with the House of Commons, bring in the government, bring in the opposition, bring in the police, and look what more we can do to provide the level of protection that our lawmakers need. Let's not forget that we have had 2 of our colleagues murdered by different extremists of different ideologies in recent years. The threat is real and they need more protection.
OK, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.